Alright, so this knife thoughts video is going to be on this knife. This is the Spyderco Slysz Swayback. And before I get into the video in earnest, I want to first say a huge thank you to JT's Knife Life. I have been interested in this knife for a while, but wasn't really planning on buying it right now. And JT's Knife Life, or JT of JT's Knife Life, was kind enough to send it along for me to check out and review. So please go and check out his YouTube channel, JT's Knife Life, and Instagram, also JT's Knife Life. And the knife community can be really generous and friendly, and that's a great example of that. So again, big thanks to JT for sending this knife along. But this is a knife that has been anticipated for a long time. It's been known that it was going to be made for a few years, and some people have said that they knew that it was in talks for something like 10 years. And Marcin Slysz has had a few really successful designs for Spyderco, like the Techno and the Bowie, and this is one that I've been looking forward to. So first, a couple things that I like about this knife. The thing I like most about this knife is that it is an attempt to bring a traditional pattern into a modern knife. So the Swayback is a really old traditional pattern you see on a lot of older knives, vintage knives, where the handle curves away from the edge of the knife when the knife is closed, and the blade well side of the handle follows that curve with a rounded butt. It usually has a Wharncliffe blade like this, but it can also sometimes have other blade shapes. So I really appreciate that Marcin Slysz is trying to bring these traditional patterns into modern knives, and that Spyderco is willing to bring them to market. I also like the construction of the knife. The finish on the titanium handle is really nice with a stone wash. The blade finish is nice with a polished stone wash. And then I like the swedging. The holes and edges are all, chamfered and no sharp edges. I also appreciate that it seems like the designer put in this kick pretty much just as a callback to the traditional pattern, because it's not functional. On a traditional knife, the kick actually stops the edge from hitting the backspring, but being that there's not a backspring, I think it's there pretty much aesthetically to fit the design, although it could also be kind of a cue to keep you from running your fingers up onto the edge. I also appreciate that they added the lock bar insert, because I've had Spyderco titanium frame locks that got really bad lock stick, and the lock bar insert should help mitigate that. So I like those things. But when I first got this knife, I had a lot of trouble opening it. The hole is kind of covered here by this handle. So when I first got it, I tried to open it like a typical Spyderco, where you put your thumb kind of flat against the hole and open it with the pad of your thumb. And just because this cutout for the hole is relatively small, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get my thumb in there. So it took me, maybe almost a day to carry it, to realize you have to put your thumb straight down into that hole and press to open. And then maybe another day or so it took me to realize that you can flick it open. I had pretty much no success flicking it open like you would a normal Spyderco. You have to put your thumb down in and then break that detent. So definitely less intuitive for me opening this knife than your typical Spyderco with a spider hole. And I think the reason for that is the constraints of the pattern. So a traditional Swayback, the edge or the blade has to sit pretty deep within the handle to keep the tip from being above the handle. And it's the same deal with this knife, but the problem is on a traditional Swayback, you can have a nail nick that sits right at the top of the blade. Whereas on a one-hand opening modern, there needs to be the spider hole not really all the way at the top, and the spider hole takes up more blade space. So you need this cutout to get into the spider hole. And for me, with my kind of thick thumbs, it can definitely be difficult to get in there. So that's one thing that I really don't love about this knife, is the difficulty of opening. Another thing that some people have talked about is the fact that it comes with the spoon clip. Now, for me, this isn't a huge problem because I think the finish of the clip fits the finish of the blade and hardware pretty well, but other designs by Marcin Slysz have had the wire clip. I really like the Spyderco wire clip, so I think that this knife would be improved with it, but it's not a huge deal for me. One last thing that I don't really love about this knife is the fact that this is a hard corner here. So if you look at this traditional swayback, and I don't have the swayback that probably most people are familiar with, the K swayback, but this is a good example. You can see that it's curved there at the butt of the handle. And what that allows you to do is when you're using the knife, you can put that butt into your hand as kind of an indexing point to help you use the knife. It gives you a lot of control, can give you more reach, and just is useful in cutting. Because this knife has this hard corner, it's definitely less comfortable. Even when you're not choking up on the blade, when you're like this, it kind of digs into the meat of your hand and makes it a little bit less ergonomic. So I'm not sure why they needed to have this hard corner. I don't know if it's something with machining or with this lanyard hole, but I wish that it wasn't there. All that said, it's certainly a well-made knife. As you can see, it's really smooth as long as you can open it without too much trouble. And it is a really cool design, being that they're bringing that traditional pattern into a modern knife. But for me, I just don't think that the difficulty in opening is justified at the price, which is about $275. At that price, you can get something, like a ZT. Not this ZT is discontinued, but most ZTs are in that price range. Or another Spyderco, another high-end Spyderco that's a little bit easier to open. Or for the pretty much same level of materials, titanium S35 VN versus CTS XHP. You can get this knife for about $100 less, and I really like this knife. This is the Mass Drop Laconico Keen. So just for me, this knife isn't really something that I'm planning to buy. Sometimes when someone loans me a knife, I enjoy it so much that as soon as I send it, or even before I send it back to them, I go buy one for myself. That's not going to be the case on this one. Now that said, the price range of $275 is already the price point of $275 is already kind of outside of my normal price range. So that could be part of it, but I think the main thing for me is that I wouldn't really want to pay that much money for a knife that I have difficulty opening. So again, I really do appreciate JT's Knife Life sending this along. Check out his YouTube channel and Instagram. I have enjoyed getting to check it out and take a look at it, and I hope Marcin Slysz and Spyderco continue to bring these cool patterns to the market, even if this one isn't necessarily for me. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell for notifications. You can check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife topics, and check me out on all social media at Knife Thoughts. And last but not least, as always, go out and do good.